The first time I saw Ethan Caldwell, he was spitting venom at a guy who dared to ask him out, his sharp tongue slicing through the poor soul like a blade through paper. He stood in the middle of the campus quad, all broad shoulders and icy blue eyes, radiating an arrogance that made everyone else feel small. I swore I'd never get tangled in his orbit until I did. And it changed everything. My name's Lucas Reed, a junior at UCLA. Just another face in the crowd of sun-kissed Californians chasing dreams and dodging student loan debt. I wasn't looking for trouble, but trouble found me in the form of Ethan, the untouchable golden boy who'd built a fortress around his heart. He was the kind of guy who walked into a room and owned its 6 feet of lean muscle, blonde hair that caught the light like a halo, and a smirk that said he knew he was better than you. Everyone wanted him, but no one could have him. Ethan didn't date. He didn't love. He didn't believe in it. Love's just a chemical trick, he'd say, tossing back a drink at some frat party, his voice dripping with disdain. A scam to make you weak. I wasn't supposed to care. I was just a theater major, more comfortable behind a script than in the spotlight, with my messy brown hair and a wardrobe of thrift store flannels. But something about Ethan's arrogance lit a fire in me. Maybe it was the challenge, or maybe it was the way his eyes lingered on me just a second too long when we passed in the halls. Whatever it was, I couldn't shake him. It started as a bet. My best friend, Mia, was sick of hearing me rant about Ethan's latest display of smug superiority. "You think you're so clever, Lucas," she said one night over cheap tacos at our favorite food truck. "If you're so sure you can crack him, prove it. Pretend to be his typesome alpha jerk who doesn't take his crap. See how long it takes to get under his skin." I laughed it off at first, but the idea stuck. Ethan needed someone to shake his world, and I was reckless enough to try. The plan was simple: infiltrate his circle, match his energy, and make him question everything. Ethan surrounded himself with a pack of equally arrogant guys, finance majors and lacrosse players who worshipped his every move. To get close, I had to become one of them. I ditched the flannels for fitted button-downs, practiced a swagger I didn't feel, and leaned into every stereotype of the cocky, dominant guy I figured Ethan secretly craved. The first test came at a campus bar, a dimly lit dive where Ethan held court like a king. I walked in, heart pounding, and slid into the booth across from him, flashing a grin I'd rehearsed in the mirror. "Mind if I join?" I asked, my voice low and steady, like I belonged there. His friends raised eyebrows, but Ethan just leaned back, sizing me up. "You think you can keep up, Reed?" he said, his tone mocking but curious. I held his gaze, letting the silence stretch just enough to unnerve him. "Try me," I shot back. That was the moment I saw a flicker of interest in those cold blue eyes. Game on. Over the next few weeks, I played the part to perfection. I matched his sharp wit, challenged his snide remarks, and never let him have the last word. At first, he pushed back hard, tossing insults like grenades to keep me at a distance. But I was relentless, showing up at his favorite coffee shop, joining his study group, even crashing his gym sessions. I'd catch him staring when he thought I wasn't looking, his guard slipping just enough to reveal a crack in his armor. He'd laugh it off, call me a poser, but I could tell I was getting to him. The turning point came one night at a party on the beach. The air was thick with salt and bonfire smoke, and Ethan was drunker than usual, his usual precision slurring into something raw. He grabbed my arm, pulling me away from the crowd to the edge of the water. "What's your deal, Lucas?" he demanded, his voice rough. "You think you're some alpha who can outplay me? You're not even in my league." His words were meant to cut, but his eyes betrayed him, searching, desperate, like he wanted me to prove him wrong. I stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat of his breath. "Maybe I'm not," I said, my voice steady, "but you're not as untouchable as you think." For a second, he didn't move, didn't breathe. Then he laughed, a bitter sound, and shoved me away. "Keep dreaming. he said, but he didn't walk away. He stood there, the waves crashing at our feet, and I knew I'd hooked him. That night, I couldn't sleep. I'd started this as a game, a way to knock Ethan off his pedestal, but it was turning into something else. Every time I pushed him, I felt the pull of something deeper, something real. I wasn't just breaking his walls. I was starting to want him, and that scared me more than anything. The next morning, I found him waiting outside my dorm, arms crossed, looking like he hadn't slept either. "Your trouble, Reed," he said, his voice low, almost a growl. And I don't like trouble. But the way he looked at me said otherwise. I smirked, leaning against the doorframe. "Good," I said, "because I'm not going anywhere." The weeks that followed were a tightrope walk of tension and temptation. Ethan and I were locked in a silent battle, each encounter charged with unspoken challenges. I kept up the alpha act, pushing his buttons, but every smirk, every glance, pulled me deeper into a game I no longer controlled. Ethan's world was a fortress of privileged country club brunches, tailored blazers, and a trust fund that let him glide through life without a care. But I started to see the cracks. He'd tense when his father called, his jaw tightening as he muttered clipped responses about grades or internships. He'd brush off questions about his family, but I caught the shadow in his eyes, the kind that comes from carrying a weight you can't name. I wanted to know more, but I couldn't let him see that. Not yet. I doubled down, showing up at his lacrosse games, cheering just loud enough to make him glance my way. I'd linger after, tossing him a water bottle with a grin. "Not bad, Caldwell," I'd say, leaning close enough to make him flinch. He'd roll his eyes, but he never told me to leave. Once, after a brutal practice, he grabbed my wrist as I turned to go. "Why do you keep doing this?" he asked, his voice low, almost vulnerable. I shrugged, keeping my tone light. "Maybe I like the view." The truth was, I was starting to see him not the arrogant prince, but the guy who stayed up late studying, who tipped waiters too much, who laughed too loud when he thought no one was watching. It was disarming, and it made me reckless. One night, at a crowded rooftop party, I found him alone, leaning against the railing, city lights sprawling below. I stepped up beside him, our shoulders brushing. "What's got you so quiet?" I asked, nudging him. He didn't look at me, just stared at the skyline. "You wouldn't get it," he said, his voice soft, almost broken. "Try me," I said, echoing our first encounter. He turned then, his eyes searching mine, and for a moment, I thought he might actually tell me. But then he laughed, sharp and hollow, and pushed off the railing. "You're good, Reed," he said, walking away. "But you're not that good." I watched him go, my chest tight with something I couldn't name. Mia noticed the change in me. "You're falling for him," she said one afternoon, her voice half teasing, half worried. We were sprawled on the grass outside the library, textbooks forgotten. I denied it, but she wasn't buying it. "Be careful, Lucas. He's not just a puzzle to solve. You're playing with fire." She was right, but I was too far gone to care. The next move came unexpectedly. Ethan invited me to a weekend trip with his friends, a cabin in Big Bear. All snow and whiskey and late-night card games. I knew it was a test, a chance for him to reassert control. I went anyway, packing my fake confidence like armor. The cabin was all polished wood and roaring fireplaces, the kind of place that screamed money. Ethan's friends were relentless, tossing jabs about my new guy status, but I held my own, matching their energy. Ethan watched me all night, his expression unreadable. Late that night, after everyone else had crashed, we ended up alone by the fire. The air was heavy with the scent of pine and bourbon. He was sprawled on the couch, one arm slung over the back, looking at me like he was trying to figure me out. "You don't belong here," he said, but there was no bite in it. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. "Maybe not," I said, "but neither do you." His eyes widened, just for a second, before he looked away. "You don't know me," he muttered. "Then let me," I said, my voice quieter than I meant. He froze, and for one heartbeat, I thought he might lean in. Instead, he stood, tossing his glass into the sink with a clatter. "Good night, Lucas," he said, and disappeared upstairs. I sat there, the fire crackling, wondering how much longer I could keep this up. The next day, something shifted. We were hiking. The group spread out along a snowy trail. When Ethan fell back to walk beside me, he didn't say anything at first, just kept pace, his breath fogging in the cold. Then, out of nowhere, he grabbed my arm, pulling me behind a tree, out of sight. "What the hell are you doing to me?" he whispered, his voice raw. His hand lingered on my arm, his eyes burning with something I couldn't read: anger, fear, want. I didn't think, just acted, stepping closer until we were inches apart. "You tell me," I said, my voice low. For a moment, we just stood there, the world silent except for our breathing. Then he pulled away, shaking his head, and walked off without a word. I knew then that I wasn't just playing a game anymore. I was falling, hard, and Ethan was starting to crack. But breaking him might mean breaking myself, too. Back at UCLA, the air between Ethan and me was electric. Every glance a spark waiting to ignite. I'd won a foothold in his world, but it came at a cost. I was losing myself in him. The alpha act was slipping, replaced by something rawer, something I couldn't fake. Ethan started seeking me out. He'd show up at the theater department, leaning against the wall during rehearsals, his presence a distraction I couldn't ignore. "Thought you'd be better at this acting thing," he'd tease, but his eyes lingered too long, betraying the joke. I'd fire back, keeping up the bravado, but inside, I was unraveling. Every time he got close, my heart raced like I was 16 again, stealing glances at my first crush. One night, he texted me to meet him at the observatory on campus, a quiet spot overlooking the city. I found him on the roof, sitting on a blanket, a bottle of wine and 2 glasses beside him. "What's this, Caldwell?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. He shrugged, but his smile was nervous, not smug. "Figured you'd like the view," he said. We sat, the city sprawling below, and for once, we didn't fight. We talked about music, about stupid professors, about anything but the tension between us. When he poured me a glass, his fingers brushed mine, and I swear the world stopped. "You're not like them," he said suddenly, his voice soft. "The others. You don't just follow." I didn't know what to say, so I just looked at him, the moonlight catching the sharp lines of his face. "Maybe I'm just good at pretending," I said, half joking. He didn't laugh. "Don't," he said, his voice almost a plea. "Don't pretend with me." I should have stopped there, should have kept the walls up. But I was tired of the game. "Okay," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "No more pretending." His breath hitched, and for a moment, I thought he'd kiss me. Instead, he stood, running a hand through his hair. "This was a mistake," he muttered, and left me there, the wine untouched. The next day, he was cold again, avoiding me in the halls, his smirk back in place. I should have let it go, but I couldn't. I cornered him after class, grabbing his arm. "What's your problem?" I demanded. He yanked away, his eyes flashing. "You're my problem, Lucas. You're everywhere. And I can't." He stopped, jaw tight, and walked away. I stood there, heart pounding, knowing I'd pushed him too far. Mia warned me again, her voice sharp over coffee. "He's not ready. Lucas, you're going to get hurt." But I couldn't stop. I saw the way Ethan looked at me, the way he fought himself. He was scared, and I wanted to be the one to pull him through it. The breaking point came at a charity gala his family hosted, all glitz and champagne in a downtown hotel. I wasn't invited, but I crashed it, slipping in with a borrowed suit. Ethan was there, polished and perfect, but his eyes found me across the room. He cornered me in a quiet hallway, his voice low and furious. "What are you doing here?" he hissed. I stepped closer, refusing to back down. "I'm here for you," I said, and I meant it. He grabbed my collar, pushing me against the wall, his face inches from mine. "You don't get it," he said, his voice shaking. "I don't do this. I don't feel this." His grip tightened, but his eyes were desperate, pleading. I didn't think, just leaned in, closing the gap. Our lips met, and for one perfect moment, everything made sense. He kissed me back, fierce and hungry, like he'd been starving for it. Then he pulled away, his face pale. "This doesn't change anything," he said, but his voice cracked. He left me there, breathless, my heart in pieces. I'd broken through, but at what cost? Ethan was running, and I didn't know if I could catch him. The kiss changed everything and nothing. Ethan avoided me for days, his absence a weight I carried everywhere. I'd see him across campus, always surrounded, always untouchable, but his eyes would find mine, and I'd see the storm raging inside him. I tried to move on, burying myself in rehearsals and late-night study sessions. But he was everywhere in the songs on my playlist, in the empty seat at the coffee shop, in the ache I couldn't shake. Mia was done with my moping. "You've got to confront him," she said, slamming her textbook shut. "He's scared. Lucas, you pushed him to feel something, and now he's running. Don't let him." I found him at the gym, alone, pounding a punching bag like it owed him money. Sweat dripped down his face, his shirt clinging to his frame. I didn't bother with pleasantries. "We need to talk," I said, crossing my arms. He didn't stop, just hit harder. "Nothing to say," he grunted. I stepped closer, grabbing the bag to still it. "Bullshit," I said. "You kissed me back. Ethan, you felt it." He froze, his chest heaving, and for a second, I thought he'd swing at me. Instead, he laughed, a bitter sound. "You think you've got me figured out. You don't know anything." But his voice shook, and his eyes wouldn't meet mine. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "I know you're scared. I know you feel something, and it's killing you to admit it." He shoved past me, grabbing his towel. "Leave it alone, Lucas," he said, but there was no venom in it, just exhaustion. I let him go, but I wasn't done. I couldn't be. The next chance came at a quiet park near campus, where I knew he went to clear his head. I found him on a bench, staring at the sunset, his hands clasped tight. I sat beside him, silent, letting the moment breathe. "Why won't you let this go?" he asked finally, his voice barely audible. I looked at him, at the way the light caught his hair, his eyes, his everything. "Because I see you," I said. "Not the act, not the walls. You. And I think you see me, too." He didn't answer, just stared at the horizon. Then, slowly, he reached for my hand, his fingers hesitant. My heart stopped as he laced them with mine, his grip tight, like he was afraid I'd disappear. "I don't know how to do this," he whispered. "I don't know how to be this." I squeezed his hand, my voice steady. "You don't have to know. Just try." We sat there until the stars came out, hands clasped, the world fading away. For the first time, I felt like I'd reached him, not the arrogant prince, but Ethan, raw and real. But I knew it wouldn't be easy. His walls were crumbling, but they weren't gone. The next weeks were a dance of progress and retreat. Ethan would let me in late-night talks, stolen glances, a brush of his hand against mine, then pull back, his fear winning out. His family was a shadow over him, their expectations a chain he couldn't break. I learned bits and pieces: his father's demands, his mother's silence, the pressure to be perfect. Love wasn't part of their equation, and Ethan had learned to believe it didn't exist. One night, he showed up at my dorm, soaked from the rain, his eyes wild. "I can't keep doing this," he said, his voice breaking. "I can't keep fighting it." I pulled him inside, my hands on his face, forcing him to look at me. "Then don't," I said. "Let it happen." He kissed me then, desperate and raw, and I knew we'd crossed a line we couldn't uncross. But the world wasn't kind to us. Whispers started his friends, his teammates, even strangers. Ethan's carefully curated life was unraveling, and I was the reason. I wanted to protect him, but I didn't know how. All I could do was hold on and hope he'd choose us. The rumors spread like wildfire, and Ethan's world started to crack. His friends turned cold, their jokes sharper, their glances heavier. I saw the toll it took, the way he'd clench his jaw, the way he'd disappear for hours. But he didn't push me away. Not completely. He'd find me in quiet moments, his hand brushing mine, his voice low. "I don't know how to do this," he'd say, and I'd tell him we'd figure it out together. His father was the breaking point. A phone call, overheard in the library, left Ethan pale and shaking. "You're embarrassing us," I heard through the line, the voice cold and final. "Fix this, or you're done." Ethan hung up, his hands trembling, and looked at me like I was his lifeline. "They know," he said, "about us." I wanted to tell him it didn't matter, but I saw the fear in his eyes, the fear of losing everything he'd been raised to be. I took him to the park again, the same bench where we'd held hands under the stars. "You don't have to choose them," I said, my voice fierce. "You can choose yourself. You can choose us." He looked at me, his eyes wet, and for the first time, I saw him let go. "I want to," he said, his voice breaking. "God, Lucas, I want to." The next day, he stood up to his father. I wasn't there, but he told me later, his voice steady but raw. He'd gone home, faced the man who'd shaped his walls, and said he was done pretending. "I'm not your puppet," he'd said, "and I'm not ashamed." His father cut him off bank accounts, tuition, everything. But Ethan walked away, head high, and came to me. We moved in together, a tiny apartment off campus, all mismatched furniture and leaky faucets. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Ethan was different, lighter, like he'd shed a weight he'd carried too long. He'd laugh more, touch me without hesitation, kiss me in public like he didn't care who saw. But the world wasn't done with us. The whispers followed, the judgment lingered, and Ethan's old life haunted him in quiet moments. One night, we lay in bed, the city humming outside. "I didn't believe in this," he said, his voice soft, his head on my chest. "In love. In us. I thought it would break me." I ran my fingers through his hair, my heart full. "Did it?" I asked. He looked up, his eyes clear. "Yeah," he said, a small smile breaking through. "But it was worth it." We rebuilt, piece by piece. Ethan found a job, took out loans, carved out a life that was his. I was there through it all, learning him, loving him. We fought, we laughed, we grew. And in the quiet moments, when it was just us, I'd catch him looking at me, his eyes soft, and I'd know we'd made it. The world would always have its edges, its sharp corners, but we'd learned to navigate them. Ethan wasn't the arrogant boy who didn't believe in love anymore. He was mine, and I was his. And together, we were unbreakable.